Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Head to Head, a Star Wars show. So, over the last couple of weeks, we got episodes 4 and 5 of The Bad Batch, and we're going to review it right now.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, it's been a minute. You weren't able to join me this past Friday.
Right. Yep, I was out of town.
That's all right, though. I was able to pretty much soldier on and had a pretty good discussion with everybody. But, it's good to have you back. I had to say, it's a lot easier to do it when you're with me on the show, considering that's how it was designed to be.
Definitely, yeah. I can imagine.
So what did you think of the last couple episodes? I know we kind of fell behind a little bit on the Bad Batch, but is it living up to your expectations? Is it better than you thought it was going to be? I mean, what are your thoughts?
So far so good. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm getting more and more used to the Omega character. I think that these last two episodes are kind of going in a different story arc, and so now there's this whole kind of mystery thing that's going on, and I'm sure we'll get into that, momentarily. But yeah, so far so good. I'm enjoying it. What about you?
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I actually, again, the show did pretty much capture me right off the bat. I mean, I thought that I wasn't, as you know, I wasn't really looking forward to this series really at all, but once I saw the first episode, I was pretty much hooked to it. Now, I have to say that some of our viewers, like Jason, he really isn't too nuts about it. And I think he actually represents the other side of the fan base where they feel that it's a little bit more filler episode heavy and that it isn't going anywhere. And, I pointed out that I really like the pacing of it. I think that it's a welcome change from the Clone Wars, and not that those series were bad. I mean, as you know, I love those to death too, but it's not so kinetic and fast-paced. It's a slow burn. And you pointed it out, too. There's this whole mystery thing that's going on, and you're really starting to find things out about the Empire, about the environment that they're in, through the eyes of these particular clones. So I think that that's pretty cool. And, again, these last two episodes are no exception. I actually really like the direction that they're taking this show.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think we're getting, like you said, a different perspective of how the Empire was formed, and then of course the wide sweeping effect that it's having across the galaxy. How everyone is, from the common person, as as a citizen, to smugglers, to drug dealers, to trade people. We're seeing how everything is kind of moving in motion, and how things are being affected because of the Empire is now taking over from the Republic, and so we're in a space now where a lot of things are happening. We're seeing some familiar faces, especially like this last episode. We saw some familiar faces. And, if definitely it's filling in the gaps, like you said, it's filling in the gaps of a lot of different things that we didn't need to actually know, but it's cool to see it. You see what I'm saying? Like it's not pertinent information. Like, oh, I really wanted to see where that came from. You don't care, but it's cool to see that nod though. It's like, oh, okay, I see where. All right, cool.
Well, and here's a thing though that I think that is particular, and it reminded me of this actually when you talked about how it's filling in the gaps of the universe, and we're seeing a wide variety of people, right? We're seeing smugglers, we're seeing different elements of the universe, and including some common citizens that we don't normally see featured in anything Star Wars related, other than them being basically background. So it's reminding me actually of the way that they're characterizing the Mandalorian series, where it's filling in the universe, so to speak.
Yeah.
And definitely. I think that that's one of the things that this show is really doing well, is whereas The Mandalorian takes place after Return of the Jedi, this is actually taking place before the original
Episode
trilogy.
4.
Yeah,
Right.
and even before Rogue One and stuff like that. So you're
Mm-hmm.
basically getting the very beginning elements of the Empire, and that's something that they really haven't filled in too much. And I'm really appreciating the way that they're doing that in this show. So are you ready to start getting into this? We got like 2 episodes we have to review here.
Yeah. So you have time.
Yeah, we got time. All right, so episode 4. Let's start with that one. We might as well start with the first one and do this chronologically. That one was called Cornered. So why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown on that one?
All right. So Corner kind of, starts off our heroes, if that's what you want to call them, are pretty much low on fuel, low on supplies, and so they need to land somewhere to, regroup and collect the necessary items. And of course, while they're there, of course, they run into some situations, and one being that they don't have enough credits to buy the things that they need to get. So they come up with this clever ruse of actually having Echo kind of play the role of a droid almost. And he kind of infiltrates, this one dealer or whatever that's kind of shady anyway, and kind of bands together this group of droids, including a protocol droid and not 3PO though. And
Right.
So that's kind of like their whole thing. And then of course, Echo was supposed to be with Hunter, and eventually she wanders off, and now we're in a bit of a situation.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. I think of the 2 episodes, I think that 5 was probably the better episode and it had the most meat to it. But I
Yeah.
really enjoyed 4. I thought that was a really cool, and I understand. Some people would actually call this a filler episode, and I understand that. And I would have no arguments with anybody that would call this a filler episode. But what I think is important about an episode like this, and again, it's a fine line between filler and story advancing, if you will. And that is that we really get to see a little bit more character development between the clones, and also between the relationship between the clones and Omega, and where Omega is actually fitting into all this. I think that it's really important that they show that, because if it's just all action all the time, or it's these big, wide sweeping plot points, I think it would feel a little bit unnatural. That's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
thing
and
that,
then, well, I mean, just going to your point, I think that's, you got to look at any stories like that. It's like, you
Exactly.
have, I mean, that's the formation of an act. And it's funny, I've been teaching my students this about like an act 1, you have to have the setup, and then you have the rising action, and then it goes through these vacillating points, and that's because if it's just one way the whole time, it's kind of like there's it's hard to really develop anything because you're going at one particular pace. So just like anything else, even a relationship, right? You meet someone, you're all energetic at first, and then you kind of peak at a point, and then you kind of get to know each other, and you kind of just on cruise control for a little while, and then something unfortunately bad may happen, or even something good may happen, and it sends you on a spike, either up or down, and then now you have to try to get back to another, you come back down or you come back up, and that's such as life. So I mean,
well, to that point though, and again, it's a great analogy, because if you look at relationships in movies, a lot of times, because they're condensing down a storyline, they have to give you all these crazy high points or crazy low points, because that's actually what creates drama or comedy, or
Right.
whatever storyline that they're trying to convey. But as we all know, life doesn't work that way. Life is actually full of the everyday mundane moments. And not that I think that the Cornered, which is the name of the episode, I don't think that Cornered necessarily was mundane. But because, again, it's like you said, they did have an issue. They were running out of fuel. Oh, what was the name of the planet? It begins with a P. Like, Patoris or
Yeah, I was about to say Pretoria.
yeah, or something like that. I mean, I'm still, I have to admit, I'm probably not as good as I should be with some of these names because, and again, you're probably in the same situation I'm in. You get really busy. I really should do, here's what I should do. I should actually watch these episodes for the actual enjoyment of it first, and then go back and start taking some notes for these shows that we do. Because I don't do that, and I should do that. I'm admitting that this is kind of like the confession here. I'm admitting that to our viewers that this is what, if I'm going to be responsible as a YouTube content creator, this is probably what I should start doing, but that did not happen today. So
Pantora's actually the name of the planet.
Pantoris. I knew it was something like that. I was all around it. Pantora.
Yep, Pantora.
Pantora.
Yep, there you go.
Almost like Pantera. All right.
Right.
See, that should have been really easy for me to remember. But so they go to this planet, and basically, and what I really loved about this particular episode is that more than a lot of the other episodes where everybody's under duress, I thought it realistically portrayed what would happen in this situation. You're running low on fuel. You have to figure out where to go. These are the kinds of things they don't usually have time to address in Star Wars related stuff. And in fact, they don't even usually have time to address this in any movie. But you really get the feel, and it's because of the pacing of this show, you really get the feeling like, man, you feel that sense of urgency almost that they do.
Oh yeah, definitely. The one cool thing about the thing I do love about the Bad Batch is that it definitely puts you in a very relatable world. So between all the different characters you have, like amongst Clone Force 99 or the Bad Batch and Omega, and what I mean by that is this particular episode, Hunter, he's going to, try to go buy some supplies and whatnot. And Tech and the guys are kind of working or trying to repair the ship as much as possible with what they have thus far. So, of course, Omega wants to go and hang out with, Hunter because, that's kind of like her leader. And, so she's like, all right, I want to learn from you. And so he's like, all right, we'll stick by. And then, of course, she gets distracted and she runs off. And now she's lost. It kind of reminded me, and I think probably every parent has probably experienced this, or even if you've been a child. Because, granted, I'm not a parent, and you're not a parent, but I remember, it took me back to a time when I got lost in Kmart with my grandmother, and I remember being separated from her because you're all playing around with something, and then you lose sight of it, and then all of a sudden you start panicking because you're like,
you know what?
Where's my parent?
There is nothing more, and I think every one of us have been through this. There is nothing more terrifying than when you get separated from your parents when you're a little kid. You're in this world that you just arrived in like 10 minutes ago. And especially because I think for me, it was at Oakland Mall. I remember in Sears, I believe, when I got separated.
Department stores are crazy, yeah.
Yeah, and there's all these
catnip for kids.
Exactly. And it's like you said, there's all these distractions, and you're not really paying attention, and all of a sudden, your parents, I mean, I guess you could make the argument that it's like the burden is on the
Their
parent
job.
here to pay attention. But
to the child, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it happens to everybody. I mean, parents are human too, and basically what happens is that you get distracted, you wander off, and there's nothing more terrifying than that initial thing to where you just, you're lost. You have no idea where you are. You don't have any experience that would teach you what to do in a case like this. And you're right. You very much get that sense. Now, did she get lost in both episodes? I know 5 she got separated from Hunter.
No. So in the first one, in Cornered, this is what made it so realistic. So in Cornered, this is what made it very realistic for me. And and I love this that they put this in here. And So okay, she gets distracted. She sees some little puppy or little dog thing, and she's all trying to talk to it, and it snatches her toy from her. So she's trying to go retrieve her toy. She wasn't trying to be disobedient. She just was like, "Oh, well, this thing took my toy. Let me go grab it real quick and come back." Well, in the process of doing that, she gets separated from Hunter, and then now she's kind of like stuck. So then now she's kind of like freaking out, and then of course, as she's wandering around, she doesn't know that, this bounty hunter is looking at her the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Fennec Shand, who we find out to be Fennec Shand.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's gonna be kind of the thing that we'll be discussing a little bit.
Right. So, but the way that Fennec Shand actually approached her was unlike anything that you've ever really seen from a bounty hunter before.
That's true.
Fennec Shand came at her very tender, very sweet, very calm.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, well, yeah, you know what? And it made me feel like a little kid. It put me in that
was
mindset of a
so
kid.
creepy.
It was creepy, but it was kind of weird because, of course, we know Fennec Shand's ulterior motive. However, and from a child's perspective, once again, you being in Oklahoma, me being in Kmart, you're looking for anybody to help you get
Mm-hmm.
back. And it's like you forget all the training that you heard of, don't talk to strangers type thing, because you're in this moment of terror. So you're just reaching out for anybody who could just possibly help you get back to where you belong. And someone comes to you very sweetly, and it's a woman, it's not a guy. So naturally you're going to have that nurturing connection, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to like, okay, well, yeah, come on, I'll help you find your person. And, grabs by the hand and, making compliments as you go along to make you comfortable. And so like the whole time you're really not paying attention and thinking like this is any potential danger. But of course, Hunter now realizes that, like, okay, I've lost Omega. Fortunately, love, it was Hunter who lost her because he has this amazing tracking ability. So now he can kind of catch on to her and figure out where she is and track her down pretty quickly. Because had that been like Wrecker or something, it would have been over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. It's the whole moment was very realistic.
Even
It was
though, I mean,
very like.
it's true, but
Go ahead.
let's give credit where credit's due. It was really Tech that was directing Hunter a lot of times on where to go too, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, actually, he was directing Wrecker, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I mean,
Yeah, you're
he
right.
did. He
You're
kind of
right.
did both a little
He
bit,
did,
but it was
yeah,
more
because
Wrecker.
when it was on the speeder bike, he let him know where he was. But I mean, it helps that they actually have this team of people that have these
Right.
exceptional skills. Because again, I agree. I think it was really interesting the fact that the approach that she had not only put you back in the mindset of a kid, but you knew that something sinister was going on. And
Hmm.
they did a really good job of portraying that fear. You really
Yes, definitely.
felt chilled. I actually felt chilled. And I was really surprised because most of the time I can watch these rather passively, but I was really getting into the emotion of that scene and feeling
Yeah,
that lost and hopeless feeling
helpless.
that you feel as a kid when you get lost.
And I can also see that how Hunter felt too is because,
Mm-hmm.
well, once again, neither one of us are parents, but you still kind of like, now that we're adults, though, you could totally understand how that would feel as a parent. Like, okay, they were just here. It's like now you're thinking about all the crazy things that could have
Oh,
happened to them.
absolutely.
They could have snatched, especially pedophiles running around. You got people, or they could have just fallen
Human
somewhere and got hurt,
trafficking,
or
falling
yeah,
in. Yeah, I mean,
walk,
it's just, I can't even imagine.
or it could be, are they stealing something? Did they walk out into the street? Your mind goes a mile an hour. And so, as from a parent perspective, so I could understand like why, and of course, he's the leader of this group, mind you. So if he comes back without the kid, they're gonna be like, well, dude, you're the leader and you're a tracker. How did you lose him? You know what I mean? It's like all of these things has got to be like going through his mind at this moment. So it's just like that angst that was kind of created in this particular situation,
Well,
but it was
there's more.
offset by Fennec Shan.
Right, but there's even more to it than that because, like you had said earlier, Omega was really trying to go. Hunter wanted her to stay on the ship,
Mm-hmm.
but she was insistent on going. And the thing is, one of the things I love about the overall story arc of the show, at least so far, again, do we establish how many episodes we're going to be in this season?
I think 12.
Is it? Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
12
right. I think it was like half of what we normally would get.
Yeah.
Like the Clone Wars always be like a
Like
regular
22.
TV thing. Yeah, exactly. So we're about halfway in. We're getting to be, at the time of Cornered, we're actually a third of the way in. But here's what's really interesting to me about all this. You have Omega, and Omega is getting off of Kamino for the first time, and she just wants to explore the whole world. She has never seen anything outside of Kamino. So from her standpoint, not only does she not realize the dangers, but she's also just so eager. She's not really thinking of them. She's just like, I want to go out and explore. And like you said, because she wants to be one of the team, if the team's going out to explore some stuff, she wants to go out to explore some stuff. But then on the flip side of that, you have Hunter, who's trying to protect her and the rest of the clones, really. And they're trying to keep her sheltered, but she's not really necessarily rebelling in a typical way, but she's not really wanting to do that because in her mind, she's been trapped the whole time on Kamino. She wants to go out and see stuff. So it's interesting how this is somewhat getting her in trouble. And I can understand the critics of the show that are saying, why do we need yet another child character that the heroes have to look after? It is kind of an overused story trope. I admit that. I think it actually works in this series, but I can understand where people are like, I want to get to the meat of the whole thing. I want to see more of the interaction between them and the Empire and some of the other stuff that's really going on here, like the bounty hunter thing. And let's get into that. Let's talk about the bounty hunter in the room, Fennec Shand. Now, we're basically introduced to her in The Mandalorian. She ended up, actually, she was in season 1, and what ended up happening was she was left for dead, basically, and then you saw the famous boot with the spurs, and it turned out to be Boba Fett. And then, of course, in season 2 of The Mandalorian, we see her more or less teamed up with Boba Fett at that point. Now, we're getting to see her back in this. It's not quite an origin story, but it's definitely Fennec Shand's around, and it's going to be really interesting to see where she fits into all of this. Were you surprised at all that this is the episode that she shows up, or?
No, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, all things considered. If you're trying to find someone, I mean, of course you're going to send a bounty hunter, but you want to send a good one, and so the fact that Fennec Shand, this is where Fennec Shand makes her appearance, is really cool. But then now, like I said, the great mystery is, well, who commissioned her to go find Omega in the first place?
Exactly.
And so now, that's the big mystery now. But we already know that she's such a formidable opponent from the Mandalorian. She gave, Din Djarin, a run for his money, in the Mandalorian when we first kind of come into her knowledge. And so then, and then of course, followed by what we've seen her do in season 2 of Mandalorian when she's now teamed up with the great Boba Fett. So we know already kind of like, I don't want to say the end game, but we already kind of know like what she's capable of. So when you see her pop up in this sector, when she's around like, a bunch of these, clones, now you're kind of like, all right, well, how much, trouble can she give them? And we kind of got a taste of that just with Hunter. I mean, Hunter fought valiantly, but it was a nice little squabble.
The Hunter fight, I could sort of hang with. It was the Wrecker fight that bothered me.
Okay.
She dispatched him way too quickly and easily, in my opinion. You can make the argument that, he was kind of just basically Hulk smash, There's no real rhyme or reason or style or logic. He's just going in there and basically just tearing stuff up. But I just think that the way that, she's throwing him around, it's like, no, Wrecker's a pretty strong guy. And he
Right.
was going at her, man. I mean, I could see her maybe dodging him or whatever, but when she basically dispatched him so quickly, that was the only thing that I thought was a little bit of an overreach.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you because like in certain situations, I think they were just trying to overemphasize how skilled she is. I think that's just what they were trying to do in that short period of time is really show that she's really like a formidable person, and we see that emphasized once again in episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you though. Yes, I mean in context and reality, I don't think that it would have been that easy just to dispatch somebody like Wrecker, especially just given his pure strength. I mean, like
strength, weight, everything,
weight,
and the
all
fact
of that.
he was,
yeah,
and it's not like he's a poor fighter either. And I think that the
right.
problem that I
and
have,
we learned that from once again from the next episode too. You see what this guy's able to hang with. You're like, dude,
yeah. And
we'll get to that, but
right, but here's the thing that really I think. And this is something they have a tendency to do in a lot of franchises. They've done this even in Marvel and DC and all that too. But I think the problem is they'll establish a group like the Bad Batch, and these guys are, a little bit more
elite,
skilled than the average clones. So they establish that, and they give them a whole bunch of enemies or whatever to fight. And then they do the same thing with Fennec Shan, but what they're trying to do is exactly what you said. They're trying to establish the fact that she's powerful, but they're doing it in a way that's more or less violating what they've already established with these other characters. Because if that's the case,
right.
then no clone should be able to stand against her. But we
Right.
know that these guys are all cloned from Jango Fett, who is arguably
Right.
a vastly superior bounty hunter to her. And we see training and all that stuff. And it's like, guys, there's no way in the world that these guys, that she should be able to take out. I mean, the way they did it with Hunter, even though I don't necessarily think that she could beat him, but the way that they did it with Hunter, it seemed like it was a little bit more. He actually was at a disadvantage at times, and she took advantage of that because she's cunning and smart. Mm-hmm. I can hang with that.
Right.
That Wrecker fight, though, that to me was completely. I was yelling at the TV. I really was.
Like,
Usually I don't, but I was yelling at the TV. I'm like, you can't do this. This just should not happen.
No, I completely understand that. I mean, it's one of those things where, we learned this even from watching Mandalorian, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were saying like, okay, he's supposed to be this great bounty hunter, but every second he's getting his butt kicked all over the place. Like, okay, when are we going to see this great, bounty hunter that we've,
That's true.
But
there is a slight difference in that. And this is one of the things that I think they do correctly, believe it or not, in The Mandalorian, is that they've established him in such a way that he beats the people that he's established that he should be able to beat, and he loses to the people that he should lose to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when he gains the upper hand or when he's bested, it's usually circumstantial. It doesn't really have anything to do with skill. They don't have a tendency to violate it as much as they do in something. Well, the Clone Wars, they've done it too, but especially in a situation like this.
Yeah. But like I said, I completely agree with you. I think the Wrecker, not saying that she shouldn't beat Wrecker, I'm just saying the way that she beat him was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, for her to actually beat Wrecker, I think would have to be a circumstantial thing as well. Because the guy's just so freakishly strong, and he's a good fighter. Let's not forget, he's cloned after Jango, too. He's a good elite fighter. There's not a, I'll take a little bit of Jason's thing, right? You do that whole, okay, Wrecker should defeat her probably 80 or 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I could even hang with the fact that if she beats him, but the way that it was done in that episode, I just thought that I couldn't believe it. And I know what they were trying to do. It's just one of those things that I just thought, and I'm not trying to harp on this or anything like that, but that was just one of those things that briefly took me out of the episode.
Gotcha.
And then,
so now that we, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it moves on because at the same time, obviously, you had Echo, which I thought that was awesome. I thought the whole Echo storyline in there was really funny. Yeah, that it's like, okay, look, you got to dress up as a droid. And really, it's a brilliant plan. I'm surprised more people haven't done this. You get somebody to dress up as a droid, you sell them, take the credits, and then the person just walks eventually. That's
exactly.
great.
You just kind of, it was very Han Solo-ish.
Very much.
That was one of those like, okay, we'll just float away with the rest of the garbage. That was kind of like one of those moments. Like,
I loved every moment.
I'm gonna hide you in plain, I'm gonna hide you in plain sight, and then when you don't expect it, I'm gonna just float away, and you don't even notice that anything happened.
Nope, and it was perfect. I thought the comedy in that part was really good, and it really established the humanity, and that's what I like. I like the fact that the Bad Batch has a lot in common with the Mandalorian in many ways. The Omega character versus Grogu. I mean, we've pointed a lot of this stuff out. But another way that it does is it gets the comedy right. It's a good balance. Yeah. It's not overly serious and stuffy, but it's not silly.
Yeah. So now that, Hunter's on this great chase with trying to track down Omega. He's, grabbed her and then he lost her and then grabbed her again, and of course, like you said, it was a whole team effort where Wrecker kind of got into the fray, and along with Echo, he kind of got the droids like, well, we're never going to get this ship running in time. So he got those droids like, all right, well, I'm the leader, follow me. We're going to get this ship ready, and everything kind of worked out. And so I just thought that was really kind of cool, just how they all kind of utilize their own respective talents to kind of get the job done. And that's what makes them such a great group.
Yeah, and I agree.
But then at the very end of it.
Oh, go ahead.
Just at the very end of it, now we see that Fennec Shan is kind of like, all right, she's talking to whomever had commissioned this this bounty. And it's like, no, I failed, but I'll get him again. It's fine.
See, and so again, this is very much that's the mystery. Mandalorian, Moff Gideon.
Yep.
Well, yep. Or Herzog. Who did he? I can't remember that character's name. But you thought that he was the main bad guy at first, and then you find out it's Moff Gideon. Then you think Moff Gideon's the main bad guy, and he's talking to somebody. So it very much has that whole thing going for it, where there's that mystery. Who's the one that's pulling the strings? Is it Tarkin? Because Tarkin was involved early on. But it doesn't seem, though, like it really is him. It's really interesting. I mean, do you have any theories of who you think it could be?
I think it's someone from the Camino thing. I think it's the Caminoans. Because they've been talking about like,
Omega. And why would they want Omega?
I think they want that back, and I think Omega's a key to a lot of different things. So I think that's who's commissioned it.
It could be
somebody from that camp.
It could be, but what I like about it, and this actually brings us right into episode 5, and that is that you leave off in episode 5, which is called Cornered, and pretty much you find out that somebody is hiring these bounty hunters to go look for Omega, that there's something up. And so, of course, episode 5, which is called Rampage, basically more or less picks up where that left off, because now the Bad Batch are realizing, hey, we can't really move so freely around the galaxy right now because she has a bounty on her head. And that sort of came as a surprise to everybody.
Yeah, definitely, because now, like, okay, it's one thing if, the Empire kind of put an APB out on the Bad Batch, 'Cause, they got that whole thing. It's almost like an active warrant for their arrest, basically. But
Mm-hmm.
then on top of it, now you got a bounty out for Omega. So now, like, all right, everybody's kind of in this point. But I think they're more concerned about Omega than themselves, obviously. So here we are. So now they're, you know, episode 5 opens up, and they're already kind of talking about it. So they gave her a comm link, so she could kind of, one, feel part of the crew, and two, it's like a way for them to kind of constantly keep in touch with her in case, and they have to kind of remind her it's not a toy,
Which
but
honestly,
it's
I thought that
crosshairs, the
was
whole thing.
I thought that was great. I loved the whole comlink thing, and then she's talking into it, and that again, you had always brought this
Typical
up.
kid.
Typical kid kind of thing that they're doing, and I
Yep.
thought that was really cool. And it wasn't, they didn't push it to where it was overly silly, but it was a typical kid thing. And I know right now, I already know there's going to be a bunch of people that are like, oh, here we go. Now we got to do the cute little kid playing with the toy thing.
Yeah.
So in addition to Joanne, Ronaldo has joined us.
I
actually thought Ronaldo was here the whole time. I'll be honest.
He is
He
is a fixture here.
He is. And I mean, the thing is that I expected tonight's show, at least the live part of the show, I expected it to be a little less, shall we say, viewed.
Engage.
Because of Memorial Day. I mean,
right.
I was actually happy that we were able to be here. I was sitting there going, well, fortunately, I don't think I have a whole lot going on, but I didn't know if you were going to, so I'm kind of like, am I going to have to do another solo show? But sure enough, we were able to make it work. But I really didn't think that there were going to be too many people on, but I don't know. Thought Ronaldo was already on. Well, hey. So now we reviewed episode 4. We're into episode 5. It's like you said, we opened things up and she has the comm link and now she's starting to play with it. But one of the things that I thought was really cool that I wanted to point out to you, I wanted to see if you caught this. It's obviously a little thing to where they can have her, she's playing with the comm link, whatever. But what I thought was really cool is that's kind of a sign like she's becoming more and more part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I think that a lot of people, some people kind of, I don't want to say hate, but some people don't like. But I think because she's a kid, but I think you're also seeing that, like, okay, the growth of the characters, how they've accepted her, how they've warmed up to her. Her whole thing, and that's her whole thing, she wants to be accepted. She wants to feel like she belongs to something. And she instantly identified with them from day one, because she knew, like, okay, well, she knew she's kind of a defective clone. And there was other defective clones, Clone Force 99, who were just like her. So she figures like, well, I want to be around these guys because at least we all kind of share the same pain, so to speak. Whereas I don't fit in with everybody else. And then they got me tied up with all the rest of the chameleons. This is not where I belong. And so her whole thing is she just wants to be a part of the crew. And I think they're trying to do things ever so slightly to just show her, like, look, we care about you. We want you to be a part of us. It's just, you got to be patient, though. So from the whole thing with Wrecker making her own bunk, basically, because they could have just gave her crosshairs. I mean, he wasn't using it, but they just, but they gave her something of her own. And, now she has her own comm link. So she's starting to kind of earn and kind of getting her own, partially for, their own peace of mind, honestly. But the other thing is, though,
definitely.
like, it makes it makes her feel, once again, a little bit more of a part. You could tell how she's gravitates to them because she even, like, her little doll, she tried to make it into a Clone Force 99 doll. And, so it's just, it's one of those things where, like, and it just shows you how to deal with kids in a way. You have to give a little to get a little. And sometimes, we as adults kind of forget that. But so I think that's cool. And then let's see, from that point, on, they give her the comm link They go out and they even let her come out and she got her binoculars. She's looking at the stuff that they're looking at. But when it's time to go for the actual mission, they make her go back to the ship. And so, of course, she's not too happy about that because she wants to go with them and be in on the action. But they know, you know, it's just not a place for them. But before they do that, I'm sorry, they had to go find. Yeah, I skipped the whole part. They had to go find Sid.
Yes.
Yeah, my fault. Sid. They had to go find Sid first, and this is based on the advice of Echo because he was saying like, well, this was a concept that the Jedi used, and so they were like, all right, let's go find Sid. Of course, Echo fails to mention that he doesn't know what Sid looks like. So now they're in this whole little bar situation, and they're trying to figure out like what Sid looks like, and so now they're trying to ask this particular I don't know what species it is, but some dinosaur looking thing or iguana. Trying to ask the questions like, say, hey, I'm looking for Sid. They're like, oh, no, I never don't know who this
Sid
person is.
Like a fat Trandoshan, believe it or not.
Is it a Trandoshan?
I think so.
I could see that.
I think so.
I could see that. And so, of course, they're kind of debating about like, well, crap, we don't know what this person looks like. But yet Omega kind of, being the nosy little kid, kind of ascertains that the person they've been talking to the whole time is Sid. Well, and so, of course, while they're arguing, I love the comedy of her actually using the comm link once again to kind of get everyone's attention.
That was gold.
I thought that was brilliant.
And again, once again, they nail the comedy in this thing. But the other things that, first of all, I thought it was pretty cool that Rhea Perlman actually voiced Sid. I thought that was a kind of a neat little thing. Mm. But in addition to that, because I recognized her voice right away. But in addition to that, I thought what was really cool was you're getting a lot of insight here. And I think that that's what people are missing. When people are critical of the show, I think that they're missing a lot of the subtleties because it's not a bunch of explosions and action and stuff like that. You're getting a little bit more insight into how the Jedi actually got a lot of their information. Once again, they're revealing something to you here. They're revealing that here's an informant. I mean, we had Dex, right? We saw that in Attack of the Clones. But here we're seeing yet another situation where the Jedi weren't just purely using the Force to figure stuff out. They had informants too, and they utilized them. And it's this really cool thing, yet again, that has a lot in common with The Mandalorian, where what you have is, okay, we know somebody is looking for Omega now, because they're hiring bounty hunters. So now our number one mission is we have to find out who this person is. Okay, well, here's somebody the Jedi used to use. Let's go to this person or being and figure that out, right? And that's what they do. And it's really cool because you're kind of on this little journey with them. You almost feel like you're part of the Bad Batch because they're basically doing all this planning of, okay, now let's do this. And they go there, and it's basically, again, you could actually create an RPG game out of this, just like you could out of The Mandalorian, where you're taking on side quests, because that's basically what happens. Like you said, they figure out who Sid is after a hilarious thing with Omega and the comlink thing. And then once they do that, she's like, okay, cool. I'll give you the information, but you got to do something for me first. And there goes basically the plot line or story structure, I should say, of every RPG game that's ever been created. And that is, you have your main quest, and then you have the side quests. And it's usually in order to get something from the person that will help you further your journey on the main quest. They usually go, okay, yeah, sure, I'll tell you, but you got to do this for me, or maybe you need gold or something. And it's the same kind of deal.
One hand washes the other.
Pretty much. And so that's what I think is really cool. Let me, because now Ronaldo is starting to actually chat. Let's see if the chats actually work. They weren't working too well last time. Hey, they work. I loved Omega in both episodes. She, along with Grogu, makes me think that Dave and Favreau know how to write characters for children that are adult-friendly better than Lucas. Oh, yeah. Yeah, without question. Because, again, Lucas doesn't even really know how to deal with adult actors. He's a good storyteller, and it is kind of weird because I know what you mean. He sometimes makes his kid characters a little bit too silly, but at the same time, I also think that the Omega character is written really, really well. He goes on to say, I think this series explores not only the father and daughter relationship with Hunter and Omega, but also the older brother, younger sister relationship with Omega and the others. And that was something I think that you brought up probably in the first review. Like when we reviewed episode 1. I think you brought that up. Because that's definitely been a thing, is that you definitely had this father-daughter thing with Hunter and Omega, but then the rest of them are almost like uncles, maybe.
I mean,
go
you
with your
definitely
Uncle Wrecker.
Yeah, exactly. And it's cool. I think that, Ronaldo is absolutely correct where, you're doing things that are kid friendly without being goofy.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing because, of course, we're mainly talking about Jar Jar, and I think that's one of those things where you can have kid friendly characters without kind of like taking people out of it with, some zany little clown character, that's unnecessary.
Absolutely. All right. So,
But yeah, yep. So we're further into 5 now. So now I think we're at the point where I was originally starting.
yes, I think so.
Yeah. So they're originally, we're back to, they're looking for this particular child called Moochie. And, so they're scanning the area and they see that this little kid sitting there, and it's like, okay, well, that's got to be Moochie. So, and of course, Omega, you once again, they always kind of remind you where she comes from because she's like, well, what's a slave trader? Because she doesn't know any of this stuff. Like this is all these things are new to her. So she's like, well, now they have to kind of have like, the father daughter talk, kind of like, okay, well, this is what, it's like your kid asks, well, what's a pedophile?
But here's a great point though, and not to turn the knife into Ryan Johnson's back or anything, but. So basically they bring up the whole slave trader thing. Hunter explains it. Here's a way that you could bring in things that plague modern society into a story without hijacking it and make it overly preachy and stupid, like the whole thing in The Last Jedi in the Canto Bight scene. It's basically a difference in how they go about these things. And I think that that's, once again, the difference between good storytelling and, well, we'll just say not so good storytelling.
Right.
The only thing that I do find interesting, and I wonder if this is more Filoni than Lucas's influence, because the whole Moochie thing, just the name and everything, kind of reminds me of, was it Stinky the Hut? It's like, what's up with this?
Moochie, Buki.
But I did
Buki
find
was
it funny,
like what Jabba called him.
Right. But that was really borderline, like, I just don't see Jabba. I think that was very much out of character for him.
But I think, if I'm not mistaken, Buki in Huttese is son, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
or
I'm
my
sure
boy.
It probably is, but...
Because I think that's what he calls Han one time. Like, Han, my Buki, or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Like, Han, my boy. I think
and you do bring up a good point. I have to concede this because it just reminded me of that. And that is that basically Jabba was more or less tender and father-like to Han Solo. So for his own flesh and blood, he would probably be the same way too. Definitely. So that's a good point.
But I think, that whole thing, the whole exchange, just kind of like once again reminds everybody that this poor girl really doesn't understand the world. She doesn't. So they kind of have to have that sit down and talk to her. And even then, she's like, "Well, that doesn't even seem right." He's like, "Well, it's not." And so you kind of have that moment. So then now they're going out looking for um uh this particular what they believe is a child, and they're going out looking for this thing, and they end up getting captured. Well, first of all, this crazy, like, it looks like that thing from Utapau. That's what it kind of looked like. That whole dragon
Yeah.
thing that Obi-Wan was on.
Yep.
That's what it kind of looked like.
And I think that that's what it was. I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, but
And those guys, those slave trader dudes, were kind of creepy
yep.
too. They were menacing
Well, yeah,
to me.
Well, yeah, and we've seen them before, and they've been around before.
Yeah, but I can't remember where I saw them from.
They are from.
Not the guys from season 7 in the Clone Wars, are they? Were they around for that, or
They were in the Clone Wars, and they were also in The Last Jedi.
Oh, really? When?
Yep, those are the same ones that were in that Cancel Bites thing you were just talking about.
Oh, well.
With the whips and everything.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
But here's the thing that I think is better about the way that they're portrayed.
Zygerian.
Yeah.
Yes, the Zygerian sex traders. And they kind of have these little, they kind of look like giant cat. They kind of look like giant cats almost.
A little bit, yeah, definitely. Well, they're menacing,
but
though.
They were the ones who had Obi-Wan. No, it was Ahsoka and Anakin that were in enslaved. Remember, like, the queen of that one particular kind of had an attraction to Anakin and everything like that. That was yep, the same ones. Yep.
Well, see, but the difference is, and I don't know, one of the things that I think I like overall about the Bad Batch, more so than even any of the other ones, and I would say this is even true over the Mandalorian, is that the villains that they have in the Bad Batch are truly menacing and chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time you actually just feel the threat that these guys have against the protagonists. And I think that that's something that you don't see too much. Sure, there's Darth Vader and the Emperor and all these guys, but they're well established by now. It's hard to come up with somebody new because you're always going to compare them to Vader or somebody like that. But these guys, I think it's just Dave Filoni that's doing the Bad Batch. He's actually able to really create some cool villains that really are, for lack of a better term, kind of scary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when you have just their stature of the Zygerians, and then just the way their attitude, they're like you said, they're very menacing, and then they're very they're actually like one of the most ruthless, slave traders. So that kind of carried a lot of weight, and because we've seen them before in different mediums, we're kind of like, all right, these guys again. Of course, they're around. So as this is going on, the Bad Batch is captured by them, and then now they are going to two of the Zygerian little scouts go to check the ship to see if there's any more on board. Omega goes to hide, and now she's kind of like trying to use a comlink for what it was originally intended for, and no one is answering. So then now she goes kind of like, all right, she goes looking, and she sees that they have been captured. And so then now she's in the process of trying to get to them and possibly, mount some sort of rescue for them. And the bat just kind of sitting around, and Tech kind of notices her crawling around, and he's like, oh, we don't have to worry about using the comlink. And we found her.
Yeah, which was another comedic thing. But the thing that I thought was really cool about that, and again, it's just the way this whole thing is done and shot or whatever, animated, is when they were searching the ship for Omega, and Omega was basically in the pilot seat. and then they come. It's the same thing that you see all the time. They turn the corner, and then she's not there. But the way that it was done, you really felt the element of danger. I think that that's one of the things I cannot say enough about this series is that when our heroes, protagonists, whatever you want to call them, are in danger, you sense that. You feel that. You actually feel like you're in the same situation that they're in. And that's really commendable because keep in mind, this is an animated series.
Right.
But yet you forget all about that every time you see it. And I think that's a good sign.
Definitely, because you're so invested into the good storytelling.
And the characters, yep.
Yep. And so, we're looking at this, and of course, Omega kind of clumsily, alerts, the Zygerians, and she eventually herself kind of gets caught. But she's wily. She kind of, right before she got caught, she unlocks this whole cage that has this little creature in it. And this creature happens to be an adolescent Rancor.
Yes.
And so this thing just starts going to town on the Zygerians, man.
You gotta give it to him. Like when you actually see the power of even a baby Rancor. Now, speaking of this, because this is a good time to put this question up. Ronaldo says, I have to ask this. Is that Rancor the same from episode 6? So I think he's asking if this is that Rancor is a baby.
Rancor, yeah. I think that's what they're leading us to believe.
Maybe.
They didn't.
They're not saying it,
but you got to understand that Jabba does have many different little pets and stuff like that. But I could understand definitely why, because of the conversations that who commissioned this capture of the return of this Rancor in the first place. So it stands to reason. And you could say that, depending on that species, how well or how fast it ages, it's already considered an adolescent at that time. So that means like it's a teenager. So this is before episode 4 or even Rogue One. So depending on how, depending on how that species is, it's conceivable that it is the same one.
Because there's 19 years between 3 and 4. And so this is taking place probably like a couple years in. So figure somewhere between like 15 and 18 years. So you have all that, plus you have maybe another 2 or 3 years, whatever, between 4 and 6. So figure like around 20 years. Like you said, depending on how it ages, depending on all that, it's a possibility. And then Ronaldo says, if it is the same, I'm going to cry just like the Rancor Keeper. And that would be actually a compelling reason to make it the same Rancor, because you basically now kind of like it. You feel for it. And this just shows you how successful Filoni, Favreau, all these current crop of writers are at taking things from Star Wars and completely changing our viewpoint on them.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that a lot lately, from humanizing the Empire to all the other things. And of course the novels and the comics are doing the same thing. But I think it would be funny because yes, you have this attachment now to this particular Rancor. And when you're actually watching Return of the Jedi for the first time, you're kind of like, oh no, it's a scary creature.
Kill it.
You got to kill it. It's endangering Luke, who's one of our favorites. Now you're going to watch Return of the Jedi and go, no, don't kill Moochie.
Right.
The thing has a name now.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's really good storytelling.
Exactly. And that's once again putting those pieces back in the galaxy together. And so while they're in the midst of doing this whole rescue mission, Tech kind of figures out that Rancors, they go by the whole alpha hierarchy system. So basically you have to beat me in order for me to respect you and listen to you. So they're like, well, Wrecker, you're up. And so Wrecker, gets into this whole like drawn out battle with this beast. And this is what brings me back to our point from the last
I
episode.
was
Was just like,
if you
okay,
hadn't
if
brought it
Wrecker,
up, I was going to say it.
like if Wrecker beat a whole
He
like
beats a Rancor.
adolescent Rancor, you mean to tell me that
But Fennec
Fennec
Shan
Shan
dispatches
just
them in like 3 seconds or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they even break it in the next episode. It's like, okay, here,
Yep.
dispatch real easy, but yet he's fighting a Rancor for who knows how many hours, probably.
Yeah.
And
I think they were like
beaten.
slugfest.
Yeah, and they established, like you said, the power of this thing already. He's
because
just mowing
the thing
people
is
down,
flipping people. Yeah.
flipping people.
Oh man, he's
no
kicking
effort whatsoever.
Yeah,
Wrecker comes in,
and he even bit and picked up that whole dragon thing and knocked it unconscious. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, this thing is powerful.
yeah.
I mean, he was kind of like Donkey Kong. He was just like jumping on top of the thing, smashing it. I mean, this Rancor was like about the business
Completely.
So the fact that Wrecker Wrecker can actually handle the Rancor, that's a lot.
Oh, I know.
Wrecker can handle the Rancor.
There's a little bit too much similarities.
But yeah, man, this just kind of shows you like, yo, this thing is no joke, but it's also a testament to Wrecker. And so of course they defeat the Rancor, and now they bring it back. And so then that's when we see the arrival of good old Bib Fortuna, popping up with the Gamorrean guards.
Which here's the thing that I find interesting about this.
Mm-hmm.
The way that he looks in this episode is very much the way that he looked at the end of The Mandalorian.
No, he wasn't that bloated.
He wasn't that bloated, but he did not look the same as he did in Return of the Jedi, though. And I thought that was a little bit, the way that he was animated was kind of like that. And I wonder if they're trying to do a little bit of, once again, kind of that soft rebooting thing that I've been talking about. They better not do that too much, because what's going to end up happening is Lucas be like, oh, all right, I'll go back in and make another special edition version and animate him like that.
Right. So, they kind of bring him back to Bib and, the Gamorrean guards and whatnot. And then, there's this whole exchange that they have. And she calls Hunter into the room. It's like, hey, you got an impressive bounty hunter that's after you guys. So you need two things, either friends and money. And he's like, well, we kind of short on both. He's like, well, if you want money, like I could use you guys. So he's like, all right,
again,
cool. I'll think about
thing,
it,
man. Dear, you want some more gold? Do this quest. Well, now
exactly.
I think we know, and I think that a lot of people, because again, admittedly, for the first two, and I'm even going to say first 2 or 3 episodes, we were establishing the series and we were wondering where it was going. What is going to be the basic? It wasn't even so much just the plot line, but what's going to be the almost like the style of storytelling that they're going to do, because they could go almost anywhere with it. So now it's looking like it's going to somewhat mirror The Mandalorian in a way, and it's going to be somewhat quest-based.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to learn more about this galaxy, how it operates under the Empire. We're going to learn about that through the eyes of these guys. We knew that already, but I think now we know how we're going to learn that, because it's the perfect thing. Basically what's happening is you have these guys who are trying to do these quests because they need money, they need friends, they need influence. They need to basically establish themselves, because one of the effects of it changing from the Republic to the Empire and them being outcast too is the fact that they no longer hold the status that they used to hold.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they're trying to get used to that, which that alone I think is a great plot point for this. But in addition to that, they were always taken care of by the Republic because they were the Republic soldiers. Now, well, what do we do now? We're soldiers without a war,
Exactly.
and we're basically unemployed because the current government doesn't have any use for us. So now they have to figure
Hmm.
it out, and we get to be with them on that journey to figure it out. And so now I think we're going to do that through a quest-based type of a storytelling medium, but then also we're going to learn through this as they're achieving these quests and doing all these things. We're going to learn a little bit about what this universe looks like now under the Empire, because remember, we didn't know. We sort of know how it ends, because once you get into Rogue One, Solo, and all that, Solo previously was about the closest we came to the earlier parts of this whole thing. But we haven't actually seen anything like that. And this is right after Revenge of the Sith. And what I think is another parallel to The Mandalorian is The Mandalorian takes place not too long after Return of the Jedi. This takes place not too long after Revenge of the Sith. So you have yet another parallel in storytelling that I think is just really
Right.
going to prove to be fascinating.
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely, great points. And I didn't even think about the bookends of how each of these stories kind of bookend together, or
Mm-hmm.
they follow the bookend of a trilogy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So this following three, other Mandalorian following six, and then um, yeah, I mean, I think the quest based thing is really cool. Like I say, it's very Mandalorian ish. Um, and once again, if it's not broke, why fix? Why try to fix it? So I think that's cool. And then even at the very last of it all, it's kind of like that whole thing where they're like, well, if the Empire is willing, or somebody is willing to spend this much time and money and effort trying to get you guys, she must be very valuable. To which Hunter is kind of like, all right, man, like what she's like, but I can keep a secret. So it's kind of like, I'm getting that Grief Karga kind of vibe
absolutely.
from
Totally. Yet
from this.
another
Yeah.
brilliant observation as far as she is totally the grief cargo of this series, or at least
Hmm.
will probably prove to be that. But one of the things I think is another parallel that I was just thinking, it's really more of a juxtaposition, and that is in The Mandalorian, Grogu was a target, but we knew why Grogu was a target. What we didn't know was
Hmm.
who was really targeting him. I mean, I guess we knew it was
Right.
the Empire, but who in the Empire and why?
Hmm.
But with Omega, though, we we know she's being targeted, but we don't really know by who, and we really don't know why.
Exactly.
And I think that that's what makes it this 1-2 punch of a mystery that's going to be really interesting to see how it resolves, because we are just as confused as the clones are. And just
Yep.
like they have
Yep.
to find out why, we have to find out why. And I think that's going to be a really
Yeah.
fun ride from here on out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beautiful part of the storytelling is, putting you in the moment with the characters, making you feel what they feel.
Hmm.
Now you're invested just as much as they are. And so, yeah, you're going on the ride with them. And that's what, keeps you coming back every week.
Yep. All right, so we got a couple of more from Ronaldo here. First, Ronaldo says, "I thought Moochie was going to eat that giant iguana. That would have been bizarre. It did.
Dude,
It
yeah,
did
he
look
did.
like it.
Well, yeah, he kind of started, he got the appetizer, which was the tail.
Yeah, yeah. Because at first I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, is he going to eat him, or is this sort of like a fighting technique? So I understand that. He also says, now this is a question for us. Do you think Fennec Shan's recruiter will be a familiar character or someone new?
By familiar character, I'm wondering, not to take a page out of your book, Eric, but
I was going to say, this
being
is kind of like
specific.
my usual thing. Let's answer with another question, shall we?
But when you say familiar character, are we talking about within this
Well, I think he means, I
within
think he just
within the
means
series, or somebody we've seen
somebody
in
we've
Star
seen.
Wars, period?
Exactly.
Because I think there's a little bit of both in that. Like, I think it's someone we've seen before, but I think that in this series, I think it's like I stated before, I think it's one of the chameleons that's kind of commissioned this.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, only because they've already somewhat established that, where they were saying, okay, we've got to get her back.
And I think that they need her for their project, whatever it is that they're working on. Remember that
Yeah.
little secret thing that they're trying to
Yep.
work? I think they need Omega to make that happen.
Well, sure, because the idea behind that secret project was it was going to make the Empire want to keep going to them for clones again.
Hmm.
Because they had established, that was one of the other things they established in the first episode was, well, the Django DNA is kind of running a little bit, it's not only running a little bit
Yes.
low, but it's a little spread out and it's become a little
Yes. It's
contaminated.
degraded.
It's spoiled. It's past
Yeah.
its expiration date. So, and then on the other hand, you also have Tarkin and, his guy pushing like, well, we should just get recruits. Like, forget clones. We'll just get people to come in and soldiers,
Hmm.
basically. So now the
Yep.
Kaminoans are watching what has been a prime main resource for them, certainly for their economy, just dry up
Hmm.
like that. And so,
That's kind of irony since they're from a water planet, but
yeah, right. But what they have to do now is they have to figure out, well, we have to do something. We have to keep this gravy train rolling, so to speak. We got to keep the money flowing in. So now they're working on
hmm,
another project. If Omega was the key to that project, then that could be. The only reason why I might say that may not necessarily be the case is only because it seems like they let her go a little bit too easy. They didn't really seem, she had a lot of freedom and she just kind of took off with those guys. I mean, granted, I know she kind of snuck off, but still,
hmm.
it just seems like if she were really that much of a key, I'm not saying she isn't, because I'm leaning toward the same thing you are, that she probably is, but we'll have to see. But I can't help but think, too, that maybe it's the Kaminoans teaming up with somebody, because I can't help but think that they're gonna do something like that. And then Ronaldo also says, in these 2 episodes, did you see anything else to indicate that Omega is force sensitive?
Hmm.
Yeah. Um.
That's how she just figured out who Sid was.
Well, there's that. I mean, that's the problem with this whole thing is that it could go either way. It's like it could be just she's really observant. The other thing too, and this is one of the things that I meant to bring up to you earlier. Actually, we never really see what her special ability is. And they even make a point to say, oh, well, you haven't found yours yet. You have to develop it, whatever, whatever. But I can't help but think that I don't necessarily think it's force sensitivity. I think it's something that has to do with whatever her special gift as a clone reject, or what did they call him? They didn't call him that. Defective.
No,
Defective clone.
defective
The
clones.
fact that
Oh,
she's a defective clone, for some reason, that triggers some special ability. I don't necessarily know if I would call that defective, but that's basically what they're going with, so that's what we're going to go with. But I think that it really ties in more to whatever her special ability is as a result of being a defective clone is more than force sensitivity. I don't know. I don't see
I get
them
it.
going in that direction with this.
Yeah, I don't think it would be forced because that would be hard to explain now. Because once again, where did she get that? I mean, granted, the Force can choose, I guess, anybody, but that's the thing. Because you don't. I mean, everybody has midichlorians in their body. It's just that Django was never Force sensitive. But if the Force decides to choose you, I mean, I guess you could
Well, the
always
other
go with that.
right, or the other way is if Palpatine started, because we know that he started getting involved in cloning too. Now that was a little
Hmm.
bit more true in the Legends, but hey, he was making a bunch of Snokes, so
Yep.
it's possible that maybe Palpatine got a little bit involved, and now he's trying to clone Force users.
You know
And
what I think? You know what I think it is? Just dawned on me. Omega's Ray's mother.
of course,
gonna
Be
start
the
a
right
whole
age.
thing now on.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Omega's Ray's mother. I
Yep.
mean,
Palpatine's daughter. That makes her. It makes Gray.
you
The
know, in
granddaughter.
a world of Jar Jar being a Sith Lord and Mace Windu is actually Snoke, and
Snoke.
all of which there is. I mean, the funny thing about that is there are things that you can hang on. I mean, that whole Jar Jar as a Sith Lord thing actually makes sense. I wanted to read it and just
It was
tear it
brilliant.
apart, but I'm like, you know what? I kind of like where this is going, actually.
I mean, it was hilarious. It's a hilarious concept, but yeah.
I know. So Ronaldo also says, I wonder, why are these guys defective clones? They're better than any other clones. That was basically the point that I was making. It's like, okay, if these guys are defective, maybe you need to make all the clones defective. Because
right. I mean,
I'm seeing a little disconnect here.
Well, what makes them just defective is because they're not obedient. They're not completely obedient. They're kind of rogue, And they keep foreshadowing this. I keep saying this, but with Wrecker, with that head, his headache.
Yeah, they did that.
There's something up with that chip.
Was that 4 or 5?
They've been doing that.
It was one of these 2 episodes. I think it was 4.
Well, it was. I think it started in 3 though.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the head injury. I'm just talking about the fact that in either 4 or 5, he actually did the whole thing again where he was holding his head and he was walking the back of the ship. No, I'm fine or whatever. What I'm saying is that really supports your point because they keep bringing that up. Almost, they don't make a big deal about it, but they keep putting that into your mind. Like, hey, remember the headaches?
It's coming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm sure going toe-to-toe with a baby Rancor didn't help.
No, not at all.
So, yeah. Ronaldo says they are the X-Men of the clone army.
Definitely.
Which is kind of true, actually. That's sort of what they reminded me of.
Yep.
Was the whole thing. So, it's going to be really interesting to see where they go with this whole thing. I mean, I, for one, again, they have all these things, all these little mysteries that they have to do. Because remember, there's certain things that were happening before that we just kind of forgot about. So they have Tarkin and whoever that other guy is that's under him that's really pushing more for a non-clone based army. For what was that?
I just said recruits.
Oh, I thought maybe you remember the guy's name. So,
oh no.
Yeah, I should have known better. So, I mean, the thing is that, these new recruits, these human guys, basically the Stormtrooper program that we know is going to happen. So you have that brewing. Then, at the same time, you have the Kaminoans who are trying to keep the money coming in and to save their economy and all that stuff. So they got some special project that they want. Now, at the same time, you got the clones who are basically on the run. And to make matters worse, not only do they have to deal with that because they don't have any resources anymore. Oh, Ronaldo said it was, or no, that guy DZ. I should actually, I'm going to put the name up here. Rampart. Thank you.
Ah, yes. Rampart.
Yes. I don't know why I keep forgetting that guy's name. But, so you have pretty much these clones now are having to learn how to function in a society where they're no longer really taken care of. At one point, they were part of the Grand Army of the Republic, which means they were basically taken care of because they were the military. Now they're outside of the system, which means they don't have the resources they used to. And so for the first time ever, they have to learn how to go out and make some money, get friends, all the things that used to come to them as a result of just being there. And then finally, you have now somebody is having a bounty on Omega. And so who is that now? So as you can see, you have all these different little story arcs. Oh, and then, of course, Wrecker with these recurring headaches, which we know means something. Ronaldo
we still don't know what's going on with...
But...
Yep. We still don't know what's going on with Crosshair either. I mean, we still haven't...
Crosshair, yes.
We still have to get back to him eventually. eventually. So yeah, like you said, there's several stories that are brewing, and like I said, I think that's where we're going to get like a definitely multiple seasons of the Bad Batch to kind of flesh everything out.
Yeah, and you basically have to, because like you said, there's just so much going on. And I think it's going to be really interesting because, once again, I think that you do have a situation where I can understand why people think, you know what, this is a bunch of filler episodes, everything. But I don't think that people are looking at this in the right frame of mind. Because I think that this series actually goes way more in depth than even the Clone Wars on some things. And we're only 5 episodes in. It's just more of a slower burn. It's a slower pace episode type of a style, but it's really fascinating. And I think that we're going to, as we get deeper into this, we're going to find out even more stuff. So again, the important thing though is that we've been chatting with our viewers, but what do you guys who are watching the rebroadcast think? And if you didn't really get a chance to chat as much as you wanted to or whatever, you can always leave a comment in the comment section. What do you think of the Bad Batch so far? Where would you rank it among the other series, either animated or non-animated, which I guess you only really have for non-animated The Mandalorian, but where would you rank it into the other series? And where do you think they're going to go from here? Who do you think is after Omega? So it's a lot of questions that we can consider. And again, not actually sure what we're going to talk about this Friday. Is there anything that was jumping out?
There might be some few things, but I got to kind of sit through it, if you will.
Oh. You know what? It's fine. It's toward the end of the show. It's just letting that go. But next Monday, I'm not really sure what we're going to do, because we could either review episode 6, but I'm thinking we're probably going to have to sneak in a High Republic comic review in there, because the latest issue of that came out. So we're probably going to do that. And then what we'll do maybe the week after is do another double episode, review. We'll do like 6 and 7 or something with the Bad Batch. Yeah, because the problem is like we're almost going to need to do a show every day at this point, because there's just so much stuff happening, so many things to review, and like we said, maybe we'll go back and even actually review some of the older shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels. That could be fun. So we'll basically leave it at that. So make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. It definitely helps support the channel. If you guys are so inclined, you want to make a little donation, you can buy us a blue milk. There's a link down in the description below. Make sure you join us this coming Friday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We will be here to chat with you guys live, as we love to do. So make sure you watch the show for more Star Wars content, because we love talking to you guys. And so with that, I think it's going to wrap it up for tonight. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.